Honest to God, this is gonna be a hard video to record. There's a ton of information, but let's just start the video and start recording. Spoiler alert, they did my boy Sokka so dirty. They did him grease. He doesn't have a family. What's going on, guys? It's your boy J2ATV. I'm back with another banger for y'all. Welcome back to the channel. We're gonna get into some more Avatar stuff. This one's gonna be a little bit more informational, but I feel like you'll still get a lot of value out of it. As always, I just want to start by saying thank you guys so much for all the subscribers. We are almost to 1,000 subs, guys. Let's keep this thing going. 90-something% of y'all are not subscribed to the channel, so if you could, just please, it really helps for the YouTube algorithm. It really helps for the YouTube algorithm. If y'all could please just drop a like and a sub for me, that would be great. I love you. I appreciate you. So as you guys know, there's a 100 Years War that happens before everything we see in Avatar, and then you go through the whole summer of Aang's journey. Then there's a time skip. We get into the Korra stuff, but it was never explicitly said in either show what happens in between. Like, we don't get to see the behind the scenes afters at the end of Avatar, and then we also don't get to see kind of the prequel, what everything before, like just before, like obviously before, but not before Korra. And so that's basically what we're gonna be getting into today. What happened after Avatar The Last Airbender, but just before the Korra stuff, in that 70-year, I think it was, gap in between. So I think the best place to start with all this is just after the very end of Avatar The Last Airbender, like the original. Aang just defeated the Fire Lord, brought peace to all the nations. Everything seems great. We all know that everything doesn't stay great forever. So even though it wasn't explicitly said in either of the animated series, you can check out The Promise, The Search, and The Rift. Each one of those three being comics that kind of go through and note the journeys that Team Avatar kind of had directly following the end of the animated series. There's a couple more, but those are like the main three that you're gonna want to check out. And I mentioned this previously before, and we even made a whole video on this, but in one of them, The Search, they answer and discover what happened to Zuko's mom. Again, please check out my previous video if you want to get the full detailed story, but I felt like that was worthy noting that that story is in one of the comics that I mentioned. So anyways, yeah, Team Avatar grows up and they end up starting families. Spoiler alert, they did my boy Sokka so dirty. They did him grease. He doesn't have a family. But no, yeah, Team Avatar ends up starting families, starting with Aang. Obviously, Aang ends up marrying Katara, end up having 3 children, Kya, Bumi, and Tenzin. Bumi was obviously named after Aang's longtime friend Bumi, and he was the only non-bender of the 3, at least at first. However, like later on in Korra, he does end up developing airbending as an adult, like later on down the line. It would have been cool if they gave that to Sokka, but I digress. But yeah, before that, he was kind of a commander. He commanded the 2nd Division, and yeah, that's really all that has to be said about him, to be honest. Kya was the 2nd born child. She was a very powerful waterbender. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I guess, on that one. She doesn't really have a big role in Korra, but it is kind of noted that she traveled around a lot, had a lot of adventures. She kind of took on that Aang travel around spirit while having the super powerful waterbending of her mother. But yeah, again, not really a lot to be said about her, but she's there. And then yeah, probably the most notable of the 3, and probably honestly of all the children in the series, is Tenzin, Aang and Katara's youngest child, and he is the first natural airbender to have been born in over 100 years. Tenzin went on to help establish Airbender Island in Republic City with his wife, and he also goes on to have 4 children, all who are airbenders. So yeah, Aang ends up going to pass at 66 or 166, however you choose to look at it. It's later said that him holding Avatar state for that long period of time actually shortened his lifespan. But yeah, after Aang's passing, it makes him kind of the only airbending master left alive, aka the only person that could teach Korra airbending. Aang and Katara aren't the only ones that end up starting a family, even though it isn't explicitly shown. Zuko's only love interest at the end of the series ends up being Mei. Zuko ends up having 1 child, it's a daughter named Izumi, and she ends up succeeding him as the Fire Lord when he passes. Izumi then ends up having 2 children. One is a daughter that is never named, and the other being Iroh, obviously named after the goat. And funny aside, the voice of Iroh is actually Don Bosco, who does Zuko's voice in the original series, and also American Dragon. And then finally, our girl Toph ends up having a family of her own. It is never explicitly said who the father of their children is. I don't know if they were trying to get messy and my boy Sokka got up in there behind his girl's back, but she does have the kids, so she was doing it with somebody. Anyways, she ends up having 2 daughters, Lin and Suyin. Toph's daughter Lin ends up running Republic City's police force, and Suyin actually ends up getting banished and ends up founding Sufu. I think that's how you pronounce it, Sufu, somebody correct me. And yeah, after serving as the police chief for some time, Toph ends up leaving in Toph fashion to the wilderness just to live as a hermit by herself until she ends up being discovered by Korra. Then, of course, like I said, there's sadly no evidence of our boy Sokka having a family. My boy's just down bad, single life forever. And there's actually not a lot said about adult Sokka at all in general. So maybe a what if video about Sokka could be really cool down the line. Y'all let me know what you think in the comments. Obviously, there's that one scene from back in Avatar: The Last Airbender where Sokka and Toph kind of have like a couple like little flirty moments, but it's more so on the end of Toph. Like a long-standing fan theory, like I said, is that, you know, Sokka and Toph probably had like a fling or whatever, and then them having the kids. But I mean, of course, that's always up for debate. Family is important, but that's really not some of the biggest changes that kind of happened in the in-between time between Avatar: The Last Airbender and Korra. The effects of 100 Years War obviously are massive, and everything's not going to be all peachy and everyone's going to sit down and sing Kumbaya in the events that follow after a long-standing war. Things get complicated. There are a ton of geopolitical issues that end up coming up. Something worth noting is the Harmony Restoration movement. This is one of the biggest tasks that Avatar Aang had to take up after defeating the Fire Lord. The events of this restoration end up taking place in the comic The Promise. So shortly after Earth King Kui was recoronated as the Earth King, Aang had proposed that the Fire Nation territories that were in the Earth Kingdom territories, you know, return to the Fire Nation. This move ended up bringing up a lot of controversy. This controversy even kind of predates that Aang choice, actually. The colonies were started by Fire Lord Sozin, as we see in the original series, when we see him claim land in the Earth Kingdom and bring people from the Fire Nation inside to that territory. It pissed our boy Roku off to no end. He left our boy hanging up on a thing with a wedgie. And why he may have defeated Sozin at that time, he never really did anything to disband those colonies that had already been set up. He just kind of said like, yo, if you do this again, if I catch you back in one more time, bro, it's over. But he never actually did anything. So yeah, after the war, Aang and Zuko tried to rid the colonies of, you know, firebenders. And while some of the newer colonies were a lot easier to handle and disbanded pretty much with no problem, some of the older colonies were kind of pissed and didn't really like this. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the older colonies that were kind of established 100 years prior during the Sozin era had kind of developed families and started whole lives in those places. Earth colony people and fire colony people ended up having families and relationships. Some of these Fire Nation people that were living in these colonies didn't want to go to the Fire Nation because they didn't see it as home. And one of the older colonies, Siu Dao, was actually totally opposed to this whole restoration colony movement, and the mayor's daughter actually ends up trying to take Zuko's life. And we also see that the resistance force, aka your boy Jet's group, are also living in said colony. So Zuko kind of wanted to negotiate and sit down with Earth King Kui and kind of see if they could meet in the middle. Earth King Kui wasn't having it. He basically wanted the colony all for the Earth Kingdom, and he actually ordered that Yu Dao be taken by force, unfortunately. And so now, obviously, there's this new conflict. Both sides are gearing for war, and it looks like we're about to start this whole thing all the way back to where we just came from with another 100 Years War. Just over territory this time instead of Aang's dead body. But after a long string of complicated events that you'll have to look more into if you read the book, Zuko, Aang, and Kui are able to come to a compromise, essentially saying that the two existing colonies that were in one would come together and create their own government so that they could coexist in the same space, and they would have one Earth representative and one Fire Earth representative with their own respective governments. That territory would then be merged into the United Republic of Nations, and the capital of that newly formed area would be Republic City, which we all know from Legend of Korra. And with resources coming from all four nations, Republic City then became a thriving metropolis filled with, you know, abundance of resources, compromise amongst colonies, all living amongst one place. Things were looking great, but as Republic City is a big city, for any of y'all that have any experience going to a city, living in a city, there's tons of problems that come. All big cities have crime and political unrest. So a lot of these issues try to be addressed. One of them being the United Republic's police force that, like I said, that Toph had led in the very beginning, but then was overtaken by her daughter. And as the city continued to grow and progress, it kind of became a reflection of the world, since citizens from all nations were able to live inside of the city. It was kind of like a cultural melting pot. You can think of it like New York. However, there were some civil wars that break out during Korra's time. The Southern and Northern Water Tribe end up getting into some beef. Obviously, with people from these two places living inside the city, conflict would break out from these two groups of people of conflicting interests within the city. So yeah, there you guys have it. Maybe I'll do a second video because there are actually some more things that I could get into, like some of the problems that we see in Korra, like what their roots are and how some of the villains that we see in Korra are associated with said issues, specifically with Zahir and Aman, but I just don't think that we have enough time in this video. I think it would end up being too long. But if you guys drop down in the comments, let me know what you guys think. If you want me to make that other video, you know, kind of addressing those other issues that I just described, or if you guys have any other type of video suggestions from me. Do you like more what if style videos? Like anything, I'm open to hear it all. Thank you guys again so much for your guys' continued support. Please, before you go, make sure you drop a like and subscribe for your boy. But with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. J2A TV out.
Too many times I feel like I'm out of love. Is you really rocking with me or is you a dub? I ain't playing with you, don't you treat me like a scrub. You could be my queen, is you with it or not?